this like 2 weeks ago because I was doing a lecture for some students, and there were 40 of them
Right.
online, and I was able to stick the slides up and everything, which is great.
Is that the one I saw that I commented on? The one where you were teaching, you were sitting at the end of the table?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So
Yeah.
in a funny way, that's what inspired this whole thing, because that's what inspired my letter to you about, you know, you have to tell the world what's happening and what the future is going to look like. And you have to write some really important theoretical paper. And yeah, I guess you're too busy for that now.
Well, I'm also, like everybody else in the world, processing all this stuff. So, um, I am busy because I want to be busy. But actually the stuff I do, I'm not in any executive role anywhere. So, the stuff I'm doing as a member of a board, or I'm doing as advisor to a crisis committee or whatever it is. But I'm not, it's sort of different from when I used to do it at City. I mean, where I'd run around and shout at people, and now I whisper quietly.
Oh my.
um, and it's quite interesting because one of the situations, there's a young guy who's just taken over an organization, and he was already going to be stretched, and he took over this organization exactly 2 weeks ago, and so he already had a big hill to climb, and now it's just a different world. So, and so instead of, my initial reaction was to get directly involved and take control of the crisis committee and all that stuff. And then I realized that this is just the old me. It's just like, that I wanted to take control, and it wasn't my role anymore because I don't have an executive role. So now what I do now is I listen to what he says, and I listen in on the calls and everything, and then afterwards I speak to him one-on-one, and coach him on what he should be doing and the risks that he's not seeing and stuff like that. So it's a different.
You don't humiliate him publicly anymore.
No, that seems to have not been a good idea.
So I think we have to back up a little, because I don't know how to edit this stuff. So I have to, like, here's the intro right now. Like, nobody else knows who you are, but this is, well, some people know who you are. But for my friends who don't, this is Stuart Lawson. He is my ex-husband, who I had to refriend on Facebook just to have this call, because, sometimes we fight and get really pissed off at each other and don't talk. But it's funny because a few minutes ago you said, let's move this call up a little bit, which I did. But my computer was running out of juice, so I had to plug it in at the source, which happens to be in Alex's room. So Stuart Lawson, ex-husband, father of my child. Yeah, so these are all Alex's. In fact, I think he picked up some of these elephants with you in India.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've taken over half of his room. He sort of knows because I sent him progress updates as I rearranged the furniture. But yeah, you saw I started this thing yesterday, and I just want to talk to, like, really interesting people going through this in different places in the world. And because you're in Moscow, you're like, there's a whole lot of interesting from the Moscow perspective, but then also the banking financial crisis. Like, is this the end of the world? So that's my intro. You can just ramble on and tell us what you see on the ground. Tell us what you see, Mr. Lawson.
What's happening here? Are you broadcasting this on something, or
It's not live. I'm recording because for all of my tech ability, this is not my wheelhouse. So until our son starts editing my videos, which could happen any day or whenever he wakes up, I'm going to put them in Dropbox, send them to him. He's going to do it from Boston, because, as you know, he's not doing all that much.
Oh, I don't know. He still manages to get a little surfing in, I see. So I just. So is there a thing where you can record this? I didn't even know that.
Well, I don't know. So I literally 1 minute before I called you, I upgraded to the pro level of Zoom. I've been on Zoom for years, so I don't even know what the capabilities of my level were. I know that your meeting can't go more than 40 minutes if you're at the
Yeah.
level it was. So for me, it's just easier if it goes, like, I don't want to have any limits like that. But I've been using this for ages. I mean, I used to have a daily Zoom call with 50 people on it.
Wow.
And it was every single morning for 6 months with 50 people.
Wow.
It was a combination of meditation, coaching, whatever. So in weird ways, I feel like I've been preparing for this for quite a long time. Certain things overwhelm me now, but yeah, this technology doesn't.
Yeah, but it has the capability, because I'm asking because I'd like to do the same thing, that once you upgrade, you can. So this is getting recorded somewhere, or?
So yes, there's a little button at the bottom where I can just hit record. And I did this once with a stylist, actually, a fashion stylist. She and I were talking about, fashion, and we cut it into little segments. So it creates a film at the end, and then you can cut it into segments. And she was using them to teach her audience about how to, whatever, dress better. I mean, it was more about your personal style and how to show that, and how important it is also in photography to care what you wear.
Okay, little black dresses, as I recall, but
no, hardly ever black. But anyway.
Oh, okay.
That's a whole other
okay, so where to start?
Yeah, where like how? Okay, so how are you feeling? First of all, you're in the full lockdown.
Not yet. Actually, it's quite interesting. Where we are is that they're doing this. First of all, it's very interesting. The comparison between the leader of this country and some other leaders is that this guy has it totally under control. So what's happening is he is the good czar. He comes on and he says, "This is terrible. We're going to do this, this, and this to help people." He declares the national holiday this coming week, so that we can all stay home from work. Which is very generous of him. He makes sure that the employers have to pay us, so he's giving that. He increases some taxes on deposits and bond income. So again, he's seen to be doing something positive, and he's going to take those and redirect them to assist in the virus. And then there's the mayor of Moscow, who so Putin's a good cop, and then the mayor of Moscow is the bad cop. And the bad cop then came out and said, okay, these are the things, everything is closed. These are the things that are going to happen. And they did it in stages. So we're literally the night before, I think we moved to a hard lockdown. In fact, just an hour ago, the mayor came out with a tweet saying, well, we asked you to stay home, but 50,000 Muscovites are on the parks and the streets. So we have 1,000 cases. We only have 1,000 cases so far. But now it's moving to the next stage. And there's videos of 200 buses full of National Guard troops that are just on the outskirts. Yesterday, they cut off all the road, rail, and air links. So the country is physically cut off now. And, I would expect really within 24 or 48 hours, we'll have troops on the street, and it will be a hard lockdown. So, and I know also because some of my friends in the banks have been contacted by the central bank and had to give their plate numbers so that that way they are allowed to move around the city. Because obviously if you have a full curfew, but you have people that have to get to work because the banks have to continue operating, for instance, then you have to issue some sort of document which is then loaded into a database that allows you to move around. So, like the good old laissez-passer in Casablanca, in fact. So that's where we are. The general attitude here has been, this is Russia. It's not going to, the virus is going to stop at the border, which is obviously nuts. It's been very bad, to be honest, in that the testing has been slow. They put a central testing in the middle of the country, so people weren't getting results for 7 days. Actually, there were very, very few tests to start with. And now that we're moving to the next stage, my guess is that we're going to suddenly see a huge uptick to justify this hard lockdown. On one level, of course, Russians are used to crises. So, 98, 2008, they've been there before. And, but there's nothing in the world that's ever been like this before. Even in a world war, even in the middle of the Second World War, people would gather together and they'd socialize and they'd be able to reinforce each other. And, it was, appalling, far worse than what we're facing at the moment. But people were able to take comfort from each other because whether you were in the army and you had a band of brothers, or you were, a civilian working in a munitions factory or whatever, you had the idea that there was society and that there was a known enemy, so that you could feel like, okay, we're together against, the enemy. We're in a very different situation now, and I think the biggest challenge that most people will face is psychological. I mean, I think that that's not totally true, because there's the physical issue. For instance, in Moscow, we have a lot of people with single room apartments, and you have to imagine the two kids, the dog, the parents. Maybe the parents aren't getting on, and everybody's now locked into that physical space, and what that does to people's mindset. And then on top of that, this idea that say you're a single person, then it's solitary confinement. There you are. I'll give you an example. One of the 5-star hotels here is run by a friend of mine, and the people in that hotel, when the government decided to close the restaurants, there was no exception for the hotels. So now he's got a 300-room hotel, and he's got 40 guests, that are left over for various reasons in the hotel. He's reduced his staff from 600 to 100, but the only way that they can get their food is by delivery, room service. So you have people stuck in their rooms in a luxury hotel where 3 times a day people come and deliver the food, and they're not allowed out of their rooms because there's a government edict that you can't have meetings of more than 10 people. So it's a very luxurious jail. And of course, I don't know, they're presumably sitting there paying $400 a night to sit in their jail rooms.
And so that's like the cruise ships, really.
Yes, exactly. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Yes, I mean, I guess when you get on a ship, you sort of have some sort of concept that you're on a ship and it's separate. Here you just have people that were here on business or whatever, and
So
suddenly they're not leaving them.
They're not even.
Sorry?
They're not even Russians.
Oh, there's a mixture. There are some people, of course, that get stuck. I had a very good friend, actually another photographer friend, who took the last flight out on Friday to Los Angeles. People are being forced to make the decision. If I can either stay and then I'm not leaving, or I have to go now, because if I don't go now, I can't get into my home country, perhaps. And then there's couples so for instance, my sister and her French boyfriend, she can get back to the UK and he can get into France, but they can't both get into France because, brilliantly, Britain left the EU, and now the border is an EU border. So if you're an EU citizen, you can get in, but if you're British, sorry, not coming in.
So can they both go to South Africa?
Well, they're both in South Africa, which is a good thing. But then they'll sit it out there. But then, of course, there's another issue, which is that the black communities see this actually quite rightly as a disease brought into the country by Europeans principally, or the Chinese. And so if that contagion reaches, which it will, reaches those townships, they have no way of self-isolating. They don't have the facilities in many of them to, have the hygiene necessary. So it will rip through these communities, and then there's the danger that that these communities will turn on the white settlers. So that's another layer of concern. I mean, I think I think this is it's totally unprecedented. I think a lot of this is about how you generate personal routines, and how you defend your mind, first of all, because I think most people, that the simple torrent of bad news, when you turn on any source. I mean, today's source, 50% of people who get into ICU die in Britain, from this thing. I mean, just the torrent of bad news means that
watching it, like a lot of my friends have just turned it off.
Yes, and
yes, you keep watching it, or yes, you've turned it off.
No, I haven't turned it off because that's in my nature, because I love a good crisis. But I've actually, even me, I've had kind of like enough of it. And I just agreed with Anna that, we won't be talking about it except once a day, because, otherwise we could just talk about it the whole time. And I think that sort of thing is really necessary. And I mean, believe it or not, I'm actually working out 45 minutes a day. I'm probably going to come out of this thing like a health farm, because I've got one window here, one window which gets sunlight for 3 hours in the morning. So I'm sitting with the window open,
yeah,
working on my suntan.
You, I don't know if you see it or what. I don't know what time. Let's see if this is. I called you at noon. And you said at 7 p.m. there.
Yeah.
So at 11, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, there's a yoga class that I do online that's free. You should absolutely do it. She's my favorite yoga teacher ever. Anna would love it too. Her name is Sue Mortar. I know you've seen me post about her and stuff. And if you just register for it, and then they send you a Zoom link, and then it comes up like video. It's so great because she's also talking about breathing and grounding and like just sort of how to integrate all this crazy energy that's raging through your body. So there you go. There's my yoga tip for you. And I see that you were cleaning. I saw a picture of you with a mop for the first time ever.
It's actually true. It's the first time I have ever held a mop. I managed 65 years. And but have you seen what I'm doing on Instagram, which is Crazy Home Diaries?
Yeah.
So I'm trying to do something. So each day I have to post a Crazy Home Diaries post of the day.
Mm-hmm.
And given that I'm stuck inside the apartment, the early ones are quite easy. I can see this being quite challenging as the days and weeks go by. But I have a couple of really good ones. So I've still got Alex's surfboard here from Elia,
right?
And I'll be surfing one day. So I'll work up the tan first, and then I'll get into surfing.
You get the tan the Russian way by standing up and like over at your window.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, what I should get, that I don't know if you remember, my dad had a patient who had silver foil. It was called Ray Tan, and I made it into a disco because the patient gave him so many cartons of these things that I put it all up in my bedroom, and it was a really great disco. But the idea was that you just stood there with a mirrored surface like this, and you got a perfect Hamilton tan. So.
But you could bring that back.
Yeah, no, I think it's actually not a bad idea. If only I still had them. I could have made $1 million.
And a drone for delivery.
Actually, well, yeah, but then you'd have to have drones with a sort of so that they go like this, so that you could get a pendulum action going, and then you'd open your window and they'd
Throw it.
Throw it in the window. I mean, if you want to know what I think, what's going to happen economically,
yeah, absolutely.
well, I mean, first of all, I'd say nobody knows what the shape of this thing is, and there's so much material that you don't know whether or not, we're all locked down for a month or 2 months or whatever it is that we have to do to flatten the thing so we don't overstretch the medical resources. And you also don't know whether, like in the Spanish influenza, the second round of this thing is more deadly than the first round. And I don't think, it's ridiculous to me to even try and understand it. I'd make 2 comments. One is the denominator in this is the number of cases. So the mortality rate that people are talking about is based on the number of positive tests. But the fact is that massive amounts of the population have probably already had it. And therefore, a lot of the forecasts of, millions of people dying and so forth are based on the mortality rates against the tested positive. But the fact is that we don't know what the real number of cases are that have already, occurred. So the mortality rates are likely to be less when it's all over. That's the first point. The second point is that it does seem like there's this anti-malarial drug. Certainly I've talked to a person that has fairly direct information that actually it can work. But of course it then has to be tested and you don't know what the side effects are. But the total doom and disaster that's running around is because people can't understand when this stops and people can't understand how it can be controlled because there's no cure. When either of those 2 things start to get clearer, then there is the potential for a major upsurge in optimism. And then that will then lead out the recovery. There is no doubt that our lives have changed. And actually, of course, you know perfectly well that this is a big issue for me and Alex because international travel, I don't know how we get back to international travel. I think
ever or within a year.
Yes, and of course, instead of the X-ray, or as well as X-rays, there'll now be a temperature check. Getting on planes, and they'll maybe come up with a testing mechanism where you get a passport and it has to be time stamped, and so you can only get on a plane if you've had a test. They've got to think of, well, yeah, because otherwise, if you get on a plane and somebody's got it, congratulations, everybody's got it. It gets very, very complicated. Maybe that we all have to wear masks on the plane. Who knows? Somebody's got to re-inject a sense of security into sitting in a metal tube, breathing each other's air for, many hours. So,
and yet the thing that keeps us safest in the world is our constant exposure to germs.
Yes.
It's the constant daily battles that our bodies are doing. That's what makes us healthy. So to sanitize the whole world is actually the opposite of the solution.
Yes.
But
obviously. Well, you know what they said in Britain, they said this herd, you have to take it as a herd. So, what we're doing is everybody's busy having fun with each other. So there's a bunch of babies on the way, and then the old guys are going to have to die. So we're just cleaning out the generation, which would be fine, except for the fact that I've got a heart condition. I'm over 65. So, I'm right in the top of the category. So there's the sort of, there's what's it doing to, the general population. Everybody's thinking this. What's it doing to the general population? And then what's my specific risk on it? Right. And, how risk averse should I be? And the answer is I should be, in my case, extremely risk averse, because if I get it in the middle of a wave and I can't get to a ventilator, then I'm done. Then you have to adjust your risk tolerance according to your specific environment. That's why I think we've got to get past these. Because the death rate, if you've got a ventilator and stuff, is obviously way, way less than if you've just got a room full of people and half of them can't get on a ventilator. So, in terms of,
that's one of the reasons that I decided to just have Alex stay in Boston because
Yeah.
I figured at a certain point, he either is already, carrying the virus or exposed to it because he's in Boston. And I just thought it's not so smart to bring him back to New York.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
how do you deal with things like getting groceries and food? And does Anna go out, or do you get them delivered?
Well, I mean, first of all, we're at the
do the
front end.
5-star restaurants deliver? Oh no, they're not even working anymore.
No, of course they're working. They're apparently, well, not of course. Apparently, some of them have kept the kitchens, and then they just do deliveries. But I bought a new freezer, and it's good for 2 or 3 weeks. Bought a new wine fridge. It's good for 2 or 3 weeks. Although I have actually decided maybe it's not such a great idea to drink a bottle of wine a day. So actually, I'm going to have to adjust my plans on that. But no, we can. I'm not allowed out actually officially no, officially because I'm over 65, and they came in with a quarantine for anybody over 65. Of course, it doesn't make sense on some level
because if anyone in your house goes out, then it's the same.
Yeah, it's the same. So I'm taking, this is my personal thing, is I'm taking the view that the two of us go out. We go out for an hour while we can, but I have a feeling that this is going to change very soon. And then I think that we have grocery shops nearby, so it's pretty easy to do that. But I'm going to take it seriously. I mean, I think in terms of the food you get, apparently the virus is killed with microwaves. So as long as so all the worry about does the food have and then the other thing,
I don't even own a microwave.
Right. Well,
the worst thing you can do to food, it's horrible.
Well, yeah, but you know what? It's a lifesaver.
Maybe.
It's a perfect excuse. I mean, I think you reduce the risks so you can to the level that you can live at. I mean, one of the interesting things that a friend of mine was saying is, listen, if he's self-isolated for 2 weeks and I've self-isolated for 2 weeks, then we know that except if we get in contact with others, we're okay, and then we can meet, because provided we don't take transport, provided we just walk, we're in the open air, provided we're washing our hands and everything all the time. And I think if this thing goes for more than, I don't know, a month, then I think circles of people will get created where if you're in a group that really knows that the other group is in total isolation, then you can take the risk. And then eventually, of course, you have to take the risk. I mean, for me, this is, given that my real job these days is, I call myself a sort of, hyped up party planner. I mean, basically, I'm, that's what I do. I introduce people. I had 100 people here a month ago to introduce the new British ambassador, who's a friend of mine. And, that's my thing, that's my value added to EY, is that, that's what I do. Well, that job's gone in a big way because people aren't going to be wanting to socialize in big groups in the near future, I don't think. But it's okay. I mean, it's okay, whatever it is.
You could do the online version. So I guess I use Zoom more than you, so you don't know. But I mean, I had a cocktail party last night with my 2 best friends. A week ago, we did 5 of us, like just all chatting like this. But you can get a screen with, a whole bunch of people on it. We're all making our own cocktails and laughing, and it's just a...
I was planning it for my birthday. I was, I'm gonna see how international I can make it. Get Rocco in.
Are you gonna plan an online surprise party for yourself?
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Schedule it. Yeah.
Schedule it.
Well, I have to do the timing right so we don't get Alex drinking at 9 in the morning, but I'm sure he'll be perfectly fine with that anyway.
No.
I mean, when you talk to him, just on a personal note, so when you talk to him, I find him to be totally calm. I mean,
yes.
I think I don't know whether that's because he doesn't understand the magnitude of what's going on, or whether or not, I mean, he's a very calm guy anyway, but...
Well, if you'll allow me to give you my perspective from a completely out there woo kind of way. Like I was literally listening to someone talk about numerology the other day, and I was doing my numbers, his numbers, all that stuff. So he's a 9. He's an old soul. He just knows things. He's very calm and relaxed. That it's not that surfing made him so calm. It's that he was drawn to surfing because that's who he is at kind of a spirit level. And I think we both think that he takes the best of us. I'm sure you wish he took more of you and the practical part. But he takes a lot of, he's super sensitive. He's so sensitive to energy that that's why I had to introduce him to Sue Morter and these energy codes and the breathing practices. Like he described to me his first experience with that. He was feeling some stress and anxiety at work, and he went into the mall and was doing this breathing practice. And he said, "Mom, I could feel the vibration of the entire mall around me." And I was like, "God, I wish I could feel that. Like, lucky you."
Mm.
So, but it has an upside and it has a downside. And sometimes he gets overwhelmed, and then everyone thinks he's so capable that they forget to ask how he really is. So I think he's lucky that way. And yesterday I got kind of mad at him because I thought he wasn't taking it very seriously. And he sort of reassured me with like, "Mom, I am taking this super seriously." And I said, "Well, then why are you having a party and socializing with your friends?" He's like, "We only see the group of us who were together in New York, like when all this started to happen, and they're not seeing other people. So it's already the people that either they're already infected or they're not. But he's not adding new people to it." And I was like, okay, I'm okay with that. So it's a little bit like what you just said. If you've been quarantined for 2 weeks and they've been quarantined for 2 weeks, then, and you're not seeing other people, then it's okay. So he's keeping the distance thing seriously. He's, but yeah, he goes out and buys beer and.
No, I know. No, and of course the point is that the risk factor for somebody at his age is so much lower than for instance for me. Yeah. That it would be unusual. It would be wrong for him to take the same precautions that I'm taking. Yeah. Because he's not at risk in the same way. So
and we know that he is acting as if he's a carrier. Like we just sort of know that that's. But he's also super healthy. I mean, he actually does do yoga every day in his room or his apartment, and he does manage to keep surfing, and he's been skateboarding, and he'll go outside and just be in the fresh air, but away from all the people. And so yeah.
Well, I mean, he's going to face everybody's going to face what happens to the second half of the year. And that's going to be something that he'll just have to deal with it when it comes.
Well, what in what aspect? What do you mean?
Well, whether or not people will be back at work, whether or not there'll be, that he'll be able to do his co-op because they may not be able to do those sort of things. Right. There may be no spare capacity.
Well, actually, I know people that could keep him super busy almost right away. I mean, a lot of people who are running online businesses need his skills. And I'm going to take advantage of him just to edit my little videos. But I'm sure there's going to come a point where he says, "Mom, I'm too busy."
Yeah, but there's a difference between that and work experience. I mean, the other sort of work experience. Well, I mean, that then leads to where's he going to end up? What's he going to be doing with his, with the degree, and what's he going to get out of the university? I mean, that's great, and it's great that he's got that. But it's the question I'd have is, how does that fit in with the course that he's doing and all that stuff? And it may be that he just at this point realigns himself and he's got to finish his degree. I'd be really against him, saying, well, this has happened and the co-op thing doesn't work, and so the whole concept doesn't work. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe everybody has to take a pause now and say, what's the, where does this end up?
Yeah, I mean, the co-op that he's supposed to be doing starts in July. So who knows if that
I know.
or doesn't start. But I don't think it matters, so if he doesn't do the co-op, then he can either go back to school, he can do a different co-op. I'm not worried, because I love the way that school is set up, and I love that he can just push it out another 6 months or whatever it is.
Yeah. No, I know. You're right. I mean,
in the meantime, he's creating his own business and doing something useful and actually helpful to a lot of people.
No, I buy that. Actually, I buy that. Yeah.
We actually, I'll tell you about this privately, because we have a friend who's building something that that he could get involved in, that could be an amazing track for him. But she's not ready to go public with it, so we're not talking about it yet.
Okay. No, well, we can talk about it later. I've got about another 20 minutes. I mean, because I've got to actually get on a call in 20 minutes time, because there's what happens is that everybody's kind of calm during the weekend, and then it's like Monday morning, it starts again. So I have like a 9 o'clock, a 10 o'clock, a 12 o'clock call tomorrow.
So who are you talking to? Who are these people that you talk to during the week?
Well, I mean, there's 3 core groups. Well, actually, there's four groups. The first is the Russo-British Chamber of Commerce. So that's all the British companies here in Russia, and by the way, all the Russian companies in the UK. So it's a true bilateral Chamber of Commerce, and our job is to help that constituent, being UK companies here or Russian companies in the UK. And so we're the channel for the information flow. We're hosting a whole series of webinars. The idea being to help them navigate this period. So I'll give you an example. I mean, everybody's moved to work at home, so there has to be a protocol of how you manage that. Here in Russia, there's still what's called wet signatures, which means you have to have physical signatures of people. For processes, for the bureaucracy it's a holdover from Soviet times. And actually, we were sort of 2 years away from getting rid of all this, but we're still there. So how do you manage document flow when there's a curfew in the city? The next example would be all the banks. They've moved 80% of their staff back into their home environments. Well, now they all are sitting there with their laptops, but they're sitting on systems that need cybersecurity, that need security, because they're moving. They've got data on them, customer data on them. They're actually initiating transactions. I mean, these are really serious cybersecurity issues. Somebody's
writing a movie about the new level of bank robbery.
Yeah, no, and I mean it's and with all these people moving and you lose the control environment. I don't even know how people. Well, I guess that you can manage the 4 eyes principle. We have 2 people, a maker and a checker. You can do that electronically, but the fact is, you have all this remote access, and you have all these computers sitting. You can't buy a laptop in Moscow now, because all the banks have had to go out and stock up immediately overnight. Wow. Because of course they were working off desktops. Most of them were working off desktops, and you can't move desktop easily into a home environment. So everybody had to have, and then they had to have all the software loaded on it. Wow. So that's one community. It's the British community. The second one is that I was elected onto the board, which is I was re-elected onto the board of the European Business Association, and that's an association of 600 European businesses in Russia. So, and it comes from, well, actually it includes Britain, but it comes from all over the European Union. German, Italian, French, all these companies who are operating in Russia, they have their own chambers of commerce. So they'll have a German chamber of commerce or an Italian chamber of commerce, but then they have us, and we aggregate all the European companies, And our role is, again, to channel information, to provide guidance, to host webinars. But it's a much sort of bigger game because we have a much bigger set of people that are depending on that. The third group is the board of directors of the Innovation Center, the Skolkovo Innovation Center, which I joined 5 months ago. And actually, that's not very demanding, but nevertheless, we have investments. How do we maintain an innovation environment? How do you actually have pitches? How, you know, you can do a pitch on Zoom, but, you know, if you're making an investment, people mostly need to, you know, meet the individual. So you can't, there's no, that final smell test, you know, you can't, well, of course, in your case, there is no smell test, but you know, that final meeting where you make the decision, how do you manage that in this sort of environment is a challenge.
So you don't think people can do that over video?
I think you can do a lot over video, but you can't do the chemistry. And I think that's an issue. That's why when you do a lot of interviews, you can do HR interviews, and you can get through a lot of the material. But if it's a senior enough job or it's an important enough investment, you've got to. In the old days, you'd say press the flesh, but I guess these days you don't say that anymore. But you know, you've got to be able to be in the room. I think because I think so much of it's body language, so much of it is the interaction with people that you can see in the flesh, and it's very difficult to do at a distance. Now, maybe that's gonna. Maybe there'll be. Maybe we will all wear these biometric. Have you seen a biometric ring? It's a ring that you wear. And because it's on your finger, for some reason it picks up biometric data much better, and you can get blood pressure, you can get heartbeat, you can, you know, and so at the bottom of the screen in the future, I guess we could have an interview, and I could be checking your heart rate.
Sounds horrible.
I know, yeah, I know. But then you'd have another dimension, so then it'd be like a lie detector. I mean, everybody'd be wearing.
Well, except you don't know if I'm actually wearing the ring or if I put it on like Alex.
Oh no, that's okay. We'll have a chip in you. We'll have a chip in you, and we'll make sure that that's
great.
Well, so, I have an implant. Actually, I have an implanted chip. I mean, a monitor for my heart,
right,
which beams it off somewhere.
Yeah, there's an episode in a movie where they kill the vice president. Wasn't it in 24 or one of those movies?
And they have Yes, that's right. Yeah,
where they kill him remotely by hacking the chip in his chest.
Yes, that's right. That was a defibrillator. Yeah.
Okay, so just say no to the chips. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. But it's so funny because what I'm hearing from you about your business world is that you're in a environment of pretty like structured structure, and everyone's trying to figure out how to redo the structure, which is very different from it's very different from the way a lot of my other sort of friends and people think, which is we need new structures. Like so on the one hand, there will be structures that can adjust and figure out how to make this work. Like when you spoke about the banking and all the people going home with the laptops, I thought, well, the nature of the banking has to shift completely so that risk is not there. I mean, you can't do that. You can't just take all the people from the bank and put them at home. That's not going to work, right? So it's almost like the system of the bank has to have been it has to have been online in a different, whatever. You know.
Well, that you could start saying, let's not go down that rabbit hole. But so basically, I agree with you, and actually, I actually think that this will change the way people work in the future. Absolutely.
Full stop. That all work has to shift.
Yes, and we have to adjust to it. I think what you're hearing from me is that there'll be compromises that have to be made in terms of how much information you can get and so forth. Mm-hmm. By the way, one other thing before I lose it is, as part of this tracking the virus, there is all this facial recognition and GPS location that are being used to, and in fact they have it here. They have not as much as in London, but they have plenty of it here. And so where there's a contact tracking, which is one of the main things at the front end,
Mm-hmm.
that people whose mobile phone was close to the person who had the virus, those people get told to self-quarantine.
Right.
Now, that's very helpful in this scenario, but do you put the genie back in the box, and
no. And this is what my stepfather used to say. And you never even met him, but my mom's husband, Jay, he died 30 years ago, give or take. And he was 46 at the time. And he always said that we are going to give up more and more of our personal privacy, like personal information, in order to have this perception of security. And boom, it's Orwell, it's 1984, it's all of that. And look at us, we're doing it. Like, oh, absolutely, keep me safe, keep me alive. Here, take all my information. Oh my God.
yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Here we're about to sign ourselves up for chips. And
Yeah.
and then you want to know who's in charge of the chips, and it's just not a pretty picture.
Yeah. Let me finish, because I said there are four, and the fourth is the student communities. So I'm still running, I'm in 4 universities, so we've just moved now to Zoom classes. I find it very difficult. I find it very difficult to teach because there's no people that have their mics muted. So if you crack a joke, or you're trying to get some sort of response, if you're in a classroom, you crack a joke, people laugh, and you've got them. If you're on a Zoom call, you crack a joke, and you crack a joke at a computer, and you just have to sort of hope for the best. So I find I've only done a few of them, but I've already found it quite challenging because it's very different.
Do you know do you turn the chat on?
Yes, but you know what the problem is? That the chat, so I need to change the font of the chat because I can't read the goddamn. So so
no,
it's
you need
like
a monitor. You need what I have. Here, let me see if I can show this to you. I don't know if you can get one right now. So this monitor it's only a $200 item made by Dell.
Wow.
And I plug it in with a cord to my laptop. So now I have 27 inches behind me. And so when I do bigger things, I can see everything bigger, because I have the same problem. I can't read the itty bitty type.
Well, I tell you what,
you can save those chats, but you have to do it before you end the call.
Okay.
I've
got to do a Zoom course, actually. That's what I need to do.
No. You need to ask one of your kids to volunteer. Just ask for someone to be your tech assistant.
Right. Good idea.
Yeah, you don't need to do a course. You just need to get you've got all those people that you're talking to probably know how to do it better than you.
Yeah. Good idea.
Just hire one of them.
Yeah. No, I think so. There you are. So that's what. And if we look at the financial.
Oh, I wanted to ask about the student thing though. So is that the most fun? Even though they don't hear your jokes and they don't laugh at your jokes?
No, because I've actually, to be honest, I have to admit that I've been trying to update my slides, and I never got to it. So I've got really, really dreadful slides generally. And now, of course, I'm very reliant on them because I haven't got my ability to sort of perform in the same way in front of them. So, and I'm doing the same material. Although one of the things that I'm going to do with all of the classes, which I did with the first class, was do so I taught them 3 weeks ago crisis management. And what I'm doing now with them is that I did an update on Friday, and I said, okay, so this is a perfect example of leadership in crisis. Let's analyze what various people are doing. Let's analyze what the issues are that are coming up. And then it makes it the perfect case study, because they're living in it, and then they can really understand the points. So I think that what I need to do, which I haven't really done yet, is to reach out to more universities. So for instance, the people at Oxford that I was doing before, and say, listen, I can run a class on crisis management, and I can make it real, because we can actually talk about what's gone on today.
Yeah.
And that might be interesting.
Yeah. And I do think you should reach out to your networks to ask for an intern who can help you
yes
make current slides and you know, I mean, Alex can edit a video in 15 minutes or less, and it would take me hours to do these things. So
no, but I laugh because when we were with Pete Zwager in
Tanya.
Naivasha,
Mhm.
he did a video, and but unfortunately, he hasn't had that 15 minutes to edit it. I might remind him.
Well, that's different. Like a big long story. A storytelling is different from,
Yeah, okay,
to.
but he should have a little of available time. But let me tell you on Pete, just separately. He's in a dreadful situation because he's self-isolating, of course, with his staff. I mean, because he's reliant on his staff. You can imagine, and he's got a very, very nice Canadian girlfriend who he was going to marry in June or July, and she went to Spain, where they have a place in the south of Spain, and she went there to check things out and everything. And then the border came down, and now she's stuck in Spain and he's stuck in Naivasha, and that can't be. And I know I saw them together. Well, Alex saw them as well, and they very much at the hip. So tough.
Well, and I also, from what I hear from my dad, the virus hasn't really hit in Africa yet. That right now it's starting to hit India. I actually have some friends I'd like to talk to in India, but that it's making slow progress around the world. So Spain is kind of worse than Africa right now.
Oh yes, sure. It's just that they were caught as the border froze. They got caught, and it's that one. It's that one decision you make, and it's just another decision. You may not realize how important that decision is. You know what I mean?
Right. Wow.
I'm going to run out of time, Tanya.
Okay. Well, this has been super fun, interesting. Yeah, I don't know. Once I figure this out, I'm going to get little things at the end so that people can, email or reach out or.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. By the way, I think it's a great idea.
Yeah. I have cool friends and ex-husbands.
Yeah, and you're very telegenic, so.
Telegenic.
Yeah, no, but you're very good at this. It's. I think you should.
I hate this. I mean, I'm good at this one-on-one, and I don't like being on camera, but I love connecting people. So that's the part I'm good at.
Yeah, and I think this works very well. So, good job.
All right. Well,
is your mother okay? Is your father okay? I mean.
Yeah. So mom left San Francisco. She went up to Sebastopol because she saw what was happening in San Francisco, and the food situation wasn't as good. And she's turning 80 this year, so she went up to Sebastopol. She's more surrounded by farms and space and things like that, so she's a lot more outdoor space. Dad was going to the gym as recently as 2 weeks ago with his doctor workout buddy, which that makes no sense. Fortunately, he stopped. Susan's at home, so they're both at home. They're amazing cooks. They limit their exposure with the whole grocery thing. So for me, the only concern with them is more that my dad, his house, right? I mean, it's just stairs and stairs and stairs. But he says that's actually his exercise now. Like, his exercise is to go to the mailbox at the bottom of the hill, and that hill's a hike to get up. And then his whole house is stairs. So there, my concern would be that he falls on the stairs, and then what? And in my mom's case, it's more that she's alone and doesn't really have her friends around her. But my mom is super tech savvy, so as long as she can get to a phone or whatever, she has connection. My dad doesn't even have contacts in his phone. He literally dials each person's number every single time. So
really?
he actually knows everyone's phone number. Because
that's good, because he's got that risk covered.
I think it was his fear of Alzheimer's. Like, that's just his thing. So he barely knows how to do FaceTime. He sent me an email the other day. My dad doesn't has never sent me an email in my entire life. So that's funny. But he reads everything. He's always reading the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal. He still gets that every single day. So he's
How old is your dad now?
He's turning 80 this year as well. So he turns 80. Susan turns, I'm not going to say. And he has his 80th birthday is in June. Mom's 80th birthday is in December. But no, they're both in like really, I'd say really good shape. So.
Well, good.
Interesting. And Laura, I haven't spoken to Laura in ages. She actually went to Laos earlier this year to go see Cindy and check out the school that Cindy built there. And so, yeah, I need to call Laura, find out what she's up.
Well, give everybody my love.
They're probably killing each other because because he probably is like tinkering and cleaning and organizing and whatever, I don't know. But at least they have a nice house with nice space outside as well. And I don't know if the kids are there or not.
And well, you've got a garden out there, which is handy as well. I mean, it's. Oh,
I could go to the woods. I mean, I go walking for an hour or two every day in the woods, and
which is great.
And I don't see a single person, so that's kind of amazing. Have they closed
the beaches there?
I was just going to say, I haven't been going to the beaches because, so I'm in a lot of Facebook groups where I have different kinds of friends, and one is moms and one is locals, and people are posting pictures of how many cars are at the beach. It's like summer. I mean, it's tons of cars, and apparently lots of people. Maybe they're keeping their distance, maybe they aren't. My friend Lise, she went to the beach and said there was more poop than ever on the beach, like people aren't picking it up. And I just thought, I'm gonna avoid the beach thing for a little bit, because that's the obvious place for everyone to go. So even when I go to the woods, if I see a bunch of cars parked, I won't stay. I'll go someplace else. Just, because it's probably someone walking their dogs as well. And I just don't want to deal with the whole dog interaction situation. So there are definitely too many, we have the summer level of people out here right now with the winter level of capacity, which is to say,
plus all the viruses that they brought with them.
Correct. And we try super hard not to separate the, and complain about the city people that came out, because, they own their houses here too. And there's no reason to really complain. It's the only hard part is that, if anything, I wish they'd come sooner. It's people coming too late. I mean, there was a story about a woman who was diagnosed as having the virus, and she called the Southampton hospital to say, I have it, I'm coming. And they said, please don't. And then she got on the jitney anyway, which is a public bus, right? Now the jitney is shut down, so they're not even running, I think, anymore. But so people were furious about that, because there is a kind of
obviously
class thing that goes on out here with the haves and the have-nots, and the people that went to Cinderella, which is the fancy grocery store, and spent $5,000, $8,000 buying groceries. I mean, that's, Cinderella is expensive. So I spend $100 on a single bag of groceries at my store, which is kind of crazy. But at Cinderella, you would spend $200 on a single bag. But still, $5,000, that's somewhere between 30 and 50 bags of groceries for one person. And that part of it's really crazy. But I think the hoarding fear part has died down a little bit. The stores have gotten smarter. They don't let more than like 20 people in at a time right now. Everyone's gotten a little bit smarter, but yeah, the beach thing is not.
Well, but Trump is being such a fucking dick. I mean, and you can keep that in.
I have to because then I can't edit.
I mean, I mean, when I teach leadership, he's the thing you shouldn't do.
Right.
Give false hope.
Right.
Give false hope. Give contradictory advice. Be unclear. Be emotive. Be confrontational
Oh, God.
during a period of crisis. That picture of only the Republicans signing the $2 trillion help package. No Democrats in the room. I mean, it's just, anyway.
I know.
I must go.
Okay.
See
Thank
you.
you. This was awesome.
You're welcome. Yeah, no, I thought so too. It was
All
great
right.
initiative.
We'll tune back into you. Bye.
Okay, bye.